Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I am back with some more philosophy. We are diving back into the works of Mr. Friedrich Nietzsche. This is Thus Spake Zarathustra. We are reading along and discussing as we go along the various topics that may come up. But before we begin, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time you get lost in the weeds and have no idea what I am talking about, there are several playlists that are linked in this corner up here and in the box down below that will help better explain. I tend to put the explanations towards the beginning of the playlist so that you can find them. With that being said, we are going to dive into 15, the 1001 Goals. Many lands saw Zarathustra and many peoples. Thus he discovered the good and bad of many peoples. No greater power did Zarathustra find on earth than good and bad. No people could live without first valuing. If a people will maintain itself, however, it must not value as its neighbor valueth. Much that passed for good with one people was regarded with scorn and contempt by another. Thus I found it. Much found I here called bad, which was there decked with purple honors. Never did the one neighbor understand the other, never did his soul marvel at his neighbor's delusion and wickedness. A table of excellencies hangeth over every people. Lo, it is the table of their triumphs. Lo, it is the voice of their will to power. It is laudable what they think hard. What is indispensable and hard they call good, and what relieveth in the direst distress, the unique and hardest of all, they extol as holy. Whatever maketh them rule and conquer and shine, to the dismay and envy of their neighbors, they regard as the high and foremost thing, the test and the meaning of all else. Verily, my brother, if thou knewest what a people's need, its land, its sky, and its neighbor, then wouldst thou divine the law of its surmountings, and why it climbeth up that ladder to its hope. Always shalt thou be foremost and prominent above others. No one shall thy jealous soul love except a friend. That made the soul of a Greek thrill. Thereby went he his way to greatness. To speak truth and be skillful with bow and arrow, so seemed it alike pleasing and hard to the people from whom cometh my name, the name which is alike pleasing and hard to me. To honor father and mother, and from the root of the soul to do their will, this table of surmounting hung another people over them, and became powerful and permanent thereby. To have fidelity, and for the sake of fidelity to risk honor and blood, even in evil and dangerous courses. Teaching itself so another people mastered itself, and thus mastering itself became pregnant and heavy with great hopes. Verily, men have given unto themselves all their good and bad. Verily, they took it not, they found it not, it came not unto them as a voice from heaven. Values did man only assign to things in order to maintain himself. He created only the significance of things, a human significance. Therefore calleth he himself man, that is, the valuator. Valuing is creating. Hear it, ye creating ones. Valuation itself is the treasure and jewel of the valued things. Through valuation only is there value, and without valuation the nut of existence would be hollow. Hear it, ye creating ones. Change of values, that is, change of the creating ones. Always doth he destroy who hath to be a creator. Creating ones were first of all peoples, and only in late times individuals. Verily, the individual himself is still the latest creation. Peoples once hung over them tables of good, love which would rule and love which would obey, created for themselves such tables. Older is the pleasure in the herd than the pleasure in the ego, and as long as the good conscience is for the herd, the bad conscience only saith ego. Verily, the crafty ego, the loveless one, that seeketh its advantage in the advantage of many, it is not the origin of the herd, but its ruin. Loving ones was it always, and creating ones that created good and bad. Fire of love gloweth in the name of all the virtues, and fire of wrath. Many lands saw Zarathustra, and many peoples. No greater power did Zarathustra find on earth than the creations of the loving ones. Good and bad are they called. Verily, a prodigy in this power of praising and blaming. Tell me, ye brethren, who will master it for me? Who will put a fetter upon the 1,000 necks of this animal? 1,000 goals have there been hitherto, for 1,000 peoples have there been. Only the fetter for the 1,000 necks is still lacking. There is lacking the one goal. As yet, humanity hath not a goal. But pray, tell me, my brethren, if the goal of humanity be still lacking, is there not also still lacking humanity itself? Thus spoke Zarathustra. This one's not quite as melancholy as some of the other ones have been, right? There's not quite the sense of hopelessness here that he seems to be plagued by in most of his other writings. Good and bad, for the most part, by and large, are subjective. They are degrees of separation. The difference between good and bad is the point of view that you have upon them, and that is what he is talking about. Peoples throughout the many epochs have valued different things. Some people valued peace, love, and security. Some people valued war, honor, and bravery, and those are not necessarily tied together in any particular way, but by holding the values dear and doing the things required to enact those values in your life, you create success. It is the same with the Bible, right? If you read the Bible and you hold to the Bible, then you will probably create success for yourself. It is the same with the Torah. It is the same with the Quran. It is the same with the various other writings from the various other peoples scattered across the entirety of the globe. Those things which you hold dear, if you are holding true, will eventually probably lead you to success. That being said, there is absolutely subjective or objective good and evil, good and bad. There is. Killing someone else is objectively bad. There can be stipulations placed upon it, which brings it into a gray area, right? If this person is a murderer with no remorse, taking them out is serving the good, even through the use of a bad act. I am a big one for remediation. I am a large proponent of reform and finding the way to help someone turn their lives around. But there are people who absolutely refuse to do that. There is also objective good, right? Helping someone in need. No matter where you are, it's probably going to be looked on as good. That is because everybody can place themselves in that position. I have been in the unfortunate position and someone helped me. And so, objectively, helping people is good. But there can be exceptions to that. You can help somebody and inadvertently cause destruction. Those are things that happen, right? So, while there is pure good and pure evil, humanity, writ large, does not ever touch either one of those, right? You are in the median in the middle, and you are meant to be in the median in the middle, neither to the extreme of either side, but making your way through the middle. Find the value system that brings the peace and harmony to your life. Find the value system that you can get behind, getting behind with all of your endeavor, because that is where success lies. It also talks about humanity needing a goal, and that is a truth. We do better if we are goal-oriented, and that is true on the macro and the micro scale. You individually will do better if you have a goal. We collectively will do better if we collectively have a goal. I personally think that goal should be going to space at the moment. It keeps us from killing other people. I am 100% on board with not killing other people. Right? Except in rare exceptions, it is the last recourse. It should never happen. There is no reason to aggress upon another person. Sorry. And so, I think that we need a worthy goal. I believe that going to the stars can be that worthy goal, but we really need to get our shit in order to do that particular thing. Time is, after all, running out. Section 16, Neighbor Love. Ye crowd around your neighbor and have fine words for it, but I say unto you, your neighbor love is your bad love of yourselves. Ye flee unto your neighbor from yourselves, and would fain make a virtue thereof. But I fathom your unselfishness. The thou is older than the I. The thou hath been consecrated, but not yet the I. So man passeth nigh unto his neighbor. Do I advise you to neighbor love? Rather do I advise you to neighbor flight and to furthest love. Higher than love to your neighbor is love to the furthest and future ones. Higher still than love to man is love to things and phantoms. The phantom that runneth on before thee, my brother, is fairer than thou. Why dost thou not give unto it thy flesh and thy bones, but thou fearest and runneth unto thy neighbor? Ye cannot even endure it with yourselves, and do not love yourselves sufficiently. So ye seek to mislead your neighbor into love, and would fain gild yourselves with this error. Would that ye could not endure it with any kind of near ones or their neighbors. Then would ye have to create your friend and his overflowing heart out of yourselves. Ye call in a witness when you want to speak well of yourselves, and when you have misled him to think well of you. You also think well of yourselves. Not only doth he lie, who speaketh contrary to his knowledge, but more so, he who speaketh contrary to his ignorance. And thus speak ye of yourselves in your intercourse, and belie your neighbor with yourselves. Thus saith the fool, association with men spoileth the character, especially when one hath none. The one goeth to his neighbor because he seeketh himself, and the other because he would fain lose himself. Your bad love to yourselves maketh solitude a prison to you. The furthest ones are they who pay for your love to the near ones, and when there are but 5 of you together, a 6th must always die. I love not your festivals either. Too many actors found I there, and even the spectators often behaved like actors. Not the neighbor do I teach you, but the friend. Let the friend be the festival of the earth to you, and a foretaste of the Superman. I teach you the friend and his overflowing heart, but one must know how to be a sponge if one would be loved by overflowing hearts. I teach you the friend in whom the world standeth complete, a capsule of the good, the creating friend who hath always a complete world to bestow. And as the world unrolled itself for him, so rolleth it together again for him in rings, as the growth of good through evil, as the growth of purpose out of chance. Let the future and the furthest be the motive of thy today. In thy friend shalt thou love the Superman as thy motive. My brethren, I advise you not to neighbor love. I advise you to furthest love. Thus spoke Zarathustra, and in so reveals ignorance. Your neighbor is the furthest love. It really is that simple, and it really is that complicated, but your neighbor is the furthest love. It is the future. It is other. It is not self. It is the furthest love. It is away from you. It is not you. Now, he is talking about the primary now, right? And looking forward as the future being the plan. But we are not meant to live solely for the future. It is true that if you plant a tree that you are never intending to rest under, then you are planting for the future, and that is good. Right? You are supposed to do that. You are supposed to think generationally. But you can't only act generationally. You have to plant the tree today. You can't plant the tree tomorrow and expect to sit under it in a year or 2, or your grandchildren to sit under it, because you may never get around to planting it. Planting it is for today. Today you have to take the action. Today you have to make the movement. Today you have to make the decision. Today you have to exhibit the love. And the best way to exhibit that love is to your neighbor, because they are right there. They are not you. They are not your family. They're your neighbor. There's someone other than you that you are supposed to be showing love to, not your friend. Of course you're going to show your love to your friend. Of course you're going to show the love to someone who returns it to you in overflowing measure. Of course you are. Show the love to someone who doesn't. That's tough. Trust me, I know. I got a neighbor right next door. The neighbor on the other side of him, I have no problems with. Nobody else in this entire neighborhood except for one problem, right? And that, again, is not me. That was them. They're holding resentment behind their own actions, just like this guy next to me. I want him to do better. I do. I pray for him to do better. I just cannot associate with him because I cannot show him the love. He refuses to accept it. And so that neighbor I have to not. And that's kind of the idea being portrayed here. But even still, showing love to him would be better than showing no love at all. It would. I try. I'm not good at it. Right? He flips that switch on me really quick. And as much as I am on the path of enlightenment and have achieved a certain level of it, I still have my troubles too. Right? I am not all wise. I am not all knowing. I'd never even try to claim to be. I have a small piece of knowledge and I am willfully throwing it at you. But I don't know everything. There are still trials to go through. There will always be trials to go through. But my mindset is take action today to plant the tree for tomorrow. It really is. And so I do disagree in whole with what he wrote here. Yes, absolutely. Water the garden around you. But remember the trees outside of the yard, too. Next up, 17. The way of creating one. Wouldst thou go into isolation, my brother? Wouldst thou seek the way unto thyself? Tarry yet a little, and hearken unto me. He who seeketh may easily get lost himself. All isolation is wrong. So say the herd. And long didst thou belong to the herd. The voice of the herd will still echo in thee, and when thou sayest, I have no longer a conscience in common with you, then will it be a plaint and a pain. Lo, that pain itself did the same conscience produce, and the last gleam of that conscience still gloweth on thine affliction. But thou wouldst go the way of thine affliction, which is the way unto thyself. Then show me thine authority and thy strength to do so. Art thou a new strength and a new authority? A first motion, a self-rolling wheel? Canst thou also compel stars to revolve around thee? Alas, there is so much lusting for loftiness. There are so many convulsions of the ambitions. Show me that thou art not a lusting and ambitious one. Alas, there are so many great thoughts that do nothing more than the bellows. They inflate and make emptier than ever. Free dost thou call thyself? Thy ruling thought would I hear of, and not that thou hast escaped from a yoke. Art thou one entitled to escape from a yoke? Many a one hath cast away his final work when he hath cast away his servitude. Free from what? What doth it matter to Zarathustra? Clearly, however, shalt thou thine eye show unto me. Free for what? Canst thou give unto thyself thy bad and thy good, and set up thy will as a law over thee? Canst thou be a judge for thyself, and avenger of thy law? Terrible is aloneness with the judge and avenger of one's own law. Thus is a star projected into desert space, and into the icy breath of aloneness. Today sufferest thou still from the multitude, thou individual. Today hast thou still thy courage unabated, and thy hopes. But one day will the solitude weary thee. One day will thy pride yield, and thy courage quail. One day thou wilt one day cry, I am alone. One day wilt thou no longer see thy loftiness, and see too close thy lowliness. Thy sublimity itself will frighten thee as a phantom. Thou wilt one day cry, all is false. There are feelings which seek to slay the lonesome one. If they do not succeed, then must they themselves die? But art thou capable of it, to be a murderer? Hast thou ever known, my brother, the word disdain? and the anguish of thy justice in being just to those that disdain thee. Thou forcest many to think differently about thee, that charge they heavily to thine account. Thou camest nigh unto them, and yet wentest past. For that they never forgive thee. Thou goest beyond them, but the higher thou risest, the smaller doth the eye of envy see thee. Most of all, however, is the flying one hated. How could you be just unto me? Must thou say I choose your injustice as my allotted portion? Injustice and filth cast they at the lonesome one, but, my brother, if thou wouldst be a star, thou must shine for them none the less on that account. And be on thy guard against the good and just. They would fain crucify those who devise their own virtue. They hate the lonesome ones. Be on thy guard, also, against holy simplicity. All is unholy to that is not simple. All is unholy to it that is not simple. Fain, likewise, would it play with the fire of the faggot and stake. That is not a bad word. And be on thy guard, also, against the assaults of thy love. Too readily doth the recluse reach his hand to any one who meeteth him. Too many a one mayest thou not give thy hand, but only thy paw. And I wish thy paw also to have claws. But the worst enemy thou canst meet would always thyself be. Thou waylayest thyself in caverns and forests, thou lonesome one. Thou goest the way to thyself, and past thyself, and thy 7 devils leadeth thy way. A heretic wilt thou be to thyself, and a wizard, and a soothsayer, and a fool, and a doubter, and a reprobate, and a villain. Ready must thou be to burn thyself in thine own flame. How couldst thou become new if thou hast not first become ashes? Thou lonesome one, thou goest the way of the creating one. A god wilt thou create for thyself out of thy 7 devils. Thou lonesome one, thou goest the way of the loving one. Thou lovest thyself, and on that account despisest thou thyself, as only the loving ones despise. To create desireth the loving one, because he despiseth. What knoweth he of love, who hath not been obliged to despise just what he loved? With thy love go into thine isolation, my brother, and with thy creating, and late only will justice limp after thee. With my tears go into thine isolation, my brother. I love him who seeketh to create beyond himself, and thus succumbeth. Thus spoke Zarathustra. And so we get a little bit of wisdom in this one. The path of righteousness is not an easy one. Right? It is a path that begins with self-reflection. It begins with your own actions. It is, what am I doing that is not in alignment with myself, with the true being who I was created to be? And when you start picking those things apart within yourself, then you can start to see the influences of others in that action. We just talked about wrath, right? Being angry. I come from a long line of angry. My dad was an outlaw. His dad was too. And so on and so forth through the hills of Tennessee. I have other outlaws in my family. It was a long line of wrath that I learned from. And it wasn't until I started picking apart myself and identifying the actual instances of unjustified wrath that I started to see the influences of the peoples around me and understand that I had to isolate myself from it because I find it disdainful. Right? I find almost everything on Netflix to be disgusting. So I don't watch it. I hold myself to a value that most people don't. They talked about values a while ago, and I hold myself to the values of what I conceive my God wants from me, and I am continuously in a position of self-reflection. But in order to purify those things within myself that I do not like within myself, I have to isolate myself from those around me who have those characteristics, because I have a tendency to mirror people. If I am hanging around people who are looking to be violent, I am quite capable of violence myself, and so I remove myself from that, and that is what he's talking about. The people that you remove yourself from will disdain you. That is coming. If you are on the path of self-improvement, it is a lone path. Almost nobody is going to come with you. Most people are completely content going around in their debauchery. Now, I'm not going to get into the specifics of sins or what the debauchery contains. That is a whole different thing. What you have decided holds the value for the progress of your life is the opposite of the debauchery. Whatever the debauchery may happen to be, drinking or sex or drugs or whatever it happens to fall into. You have decided these things are not for me, and you have to stand on that. That's a difficult thing to do. It is difficult to go against conventions. If you don't know that I know what I am talking about, I have a whole playlist right here. It's called the Unconventional Bible Study, where I shit on my own beliefs growing up. Things that I firmly held and argued for. I went back and investigated piece by piece and step by step. We understood why I no longer do. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to take the same journey I am on. I am here to show the journey that I am on, and it is me identifying things within me that I don't like. A lot of them can be tied back to that particular book. And that's a whole level of reflection that most people are not willing to do. On a superficial level, you can hold the tenets that are outlined in that book and you will be probably okay. But there are several things in there. If you do them, you're going to wind up in a bad spot. That is true. And I'm not going to get into the specifics. We went into a lot of details, but go back and look at them covenants. You have to defy the conventions because society around you is debauchery. Writ large throughout history. It is only those seeking to isolate and improve themselves that overcome that particular problem. And Nietzsche was trying. I don't believe that he ever succeeded, but he did go through the isolation for sure. He had a great disdain for a lot of different people, and he was quite free in expressing that, and that tends to lead to isolation for sure, at a minimum. Doesn't always lead to enlightenment, though, as we are definitely learning as we go through Nietzsche, but the isolation is a necessary part. You will, if you want to grow spiritually, have to cut loose people that you love dearly. That is the truth. And it is not because they are bad, but it is because you cannot be better if you are hanging around with worse. And that is the truth. Old and young women. Why stealest thou along so furtively in the twilight, Zarathustra, and what hidest thou so carefully under thy mantle? Is it a treasure that has been given to thee, or a child that has been born thee? Or goest thou thyself on a thief's errand, thou friend of the evil? Verily, my brother, said Zarathustra, it is a treasure that hath been given to me. It is a little truth which I carry, but it is naughty, like a young child, and if I hold not its mouth, it screameth too loudly. And as I went on my way alone today at the hour when the sun declineth, there met me an old woman, and she spake thus unto my soul. Much hath Zarathustra spoken also to us women, but never spake he unto us concerning woman. And I answered her, concerning woman, one should only talk unto men. Talk also unto me of woman, said she. I am old enough to forget it presently. And I obliged the old woman, and spake thus unto her: Everything in woman is a riddle, and everything in woman hath one solution. It is called pregnancy. Man is for woman a means. The purpose is always the child, but what is woman for man? Two different things wanteth a true man, danger and diversion. Therefore wanteth he woman as the most dangerous plaything. Man shall be trained for war, and woman for the recreation of the warrior. All else is folly. Two sweet fruits like these the warrior liketh not. Therefore liketh he woman. Bitter is even the sweetest woman. Better than man doth a woman understand children, but man is more childish than woman. In the true man there is a child hidden, it wanteth to play. Up then, ye women, and discover the child in man. A plaything let woman be, pure and fine, like a precious stone, illumined with the virtues of a world not yet come. Let the beam of a star shine in your love. Let your hope say, May I bear the Superman. In your love let there be valor. With your love shall ye assail him who inspire you with fear. In your love be your honor. Little doth woman understand otherwise about honor. But let this be your honor, always to love more than you are loved, and never be the second. Let man fear woman when she loveth, then maketh she every sacrifice, and everything else she regardeth as worthless. Let man fear woman when she hateth, for man in his innermost soul is merely evil. Women, however, is mean. Whom hateth woman most? Thus spake the iron to the lodestone, I hate thee most, because thou attractest, but art too weak to draw unto thee. The happiness of man is, I will. The happiness of woman is, he will. Lo, now that the world become perfect, thus thinketh every woman when she obeyeth with all her love. Obey must the woman, and find a depth for her surface. Surface is woman's soul, a mobile, stormy film on shallow water. Man's soul, however, is deep. Its current gusheth in subterranean caverns. Woman surmiseth its force, but comprehendeth it not. Then answered me the old woman, Many fine things hath Zarathustra said, especially for those who are young enough for them. Strange. Zarathustra knoweth little about women, and yet he is right about them? No, he's not. Doth this happen? Because with women nothing is impossible. And now, accept a little truth by way of thanks. I am old enough for it. Swaddle it up and hold its mouth, otherwise it will scream too loudly the little truth. Give me, woman, thy little truth, said I, and thus spake the woman. Thou goest to women? Do not forget thy whip. Thus spoke Zarathustra. And I talked before, and this is pure speculation. Right? I think that Nietzsche was gay. I think that a lot of his resentment is tied up in that, and this particular section is definitely reinforcing that shit. You cannot have loved a woman and think like this. It is not possible. You can imitate love and think like this. You can aspire to love and think like this, but you have not loved if you think like this. So a woman is just a cum dumpster? Is that what you're saying? Just used for pleasure and for children? Well, that's silly. My wife is my helpmeet. Now, I'm going to take away the work, right? Because we have swapped positions. I do the housework and my wife goes and works a job. That is because of my particular situation. So we're going to set that aside. My wife is my inspiration. She is the iron with which I sharpen myself. She is the example of that which I strive to be in many, many cases. And we have things to teach each other. To think that she is solely for my pleasure, that's a wild statement. And if you believe anything resembling that, I'm sad for you, right? That probably has a lot to do with the melancholy that is Nietzsche. There is so much sadness wrapped in every one of these stories, and people are like, oh, this is some deep philosophical thing. No, this is a man that had no clue, right? He thought deep thoughts, but he did not think them through. He didn't finish the complete thought. And if my speculation is correct, right, this subject is one that he has no understanding. Like, none. He doesn't understand the companionship of a woman. He doesn't understand the love of a woman, the refining fire that is a woman. Yes, my wife bore my children, and that is the least of the happiness that she brought me, and my children make me infinitely happy. My wife has done more for my progression as a soul than any book that I have ever read. She has done more for me becoming who I am today as opposed to who I used to be than any work of anybody else on the planet ever. It is only through her example that I find where I have been wrong. It is through the things that she does that I find the improvement in myself. And to make the argument that she is worthless, that is silly. That is completely dismissible. This almost invalidates the entire work that he has done. This one section. This man was extremely depressed, right? Like, even in your periods of manic, depression is still there. And so he is manically writing this in a short period of time. He told us that, right? And it was a couple of weeks. I forget the exact timing, but it was a couple of weeks. And like, that's a manic state. You're up, you're doing, but still the depression is there. Now, a large part of that, if I am correct in my speculations, is the fact that he was not accepted by society at all. Because back then, much like today in the Muslim world, you would wind up not alive if you exposed proclivities towards the same sex. That doesn't mean that it didn't exist. That's as old as time itself. And so, this was a man completely alone. Like, even finding a partner, if my speculation is correct, is infinitely harder then than it is now. I mean, God knows that's the wrong direction, but like, the way that you were born, the way that you were built, the things that you were designed for, those are the things that naturally make you happy. And if those things are designed, or if those things are denied to you, then it's going to cause you an infinite amount of pain. If you were designed to want to brush your teeth with a penis, then a vagina is not going to do it for you, right? That is a whole different want. And so, if that want is not returned at all, it is going to cause great bitterness. And I believe that a lot of this problem is that. And that is not me trying to retcon some homosexuality into some things. I don't hold the disdain for that other people do. I don't. I really don't. I think that if you were born that way, then that is the way you were born. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is God giving you an option. Back in his day, that option was taken by force. That explains a lot. I take extreme exception to a lot of the things that was said in this particular part. And hopefully I have expressed that in a clear way, right? Taking apart the gender roles, right? Because we have swapped, me and my wife. She goes to work every day. I am the homemaker. I do the cooking and the cleaning. I am in charge of those things. In 100 years, if that is the societal norm, are they going to say that I am nothing but a cum supplier? That's insane to me. Looks like we got time for at least one more, so let's dive into 14. The Bite of the Adder. One day had Zarathustra fallen asleep under a fig tree, owing to the heat, and with his arms over his face. And there came an adder, and bit him in the neck, so that Zarathustra screamed with pain. When he had taken his arm from his face, he looked at the serpent, and then did it recognize the eyes of Zarathustra, wriggled awkwardly, and tried to get away. Not at all, said Zarathustra. As yet hast thou not received my thanks. Thou hast awakened me in time. My journey is yet long. Thy journey is short, said the adder sadly. My poison is fatal. Zarathustra smiled. When did ever a dragon die of a serpent's poison? Said he. But take thy poison back. Thou art not rich enough to present it to me. Then fell the adder again on his neck and licked his wound. When Zarathustra once told this to his disciples, they asked him, And what, O Zarathustra, is the moral of thy story? And Zarathustra answered them thus, The destroyer of morality, the good and just, call me. My story is immoral. When, however, you have an enemy, then return him not good for evil, for that would abash him, but prove that he have done something good to you. And rather be angry than abash anyone, and when ye are cursed, it pleaseth me not that ye should desire to bless. Rather curse a little also. And should a great injustice befall you, then do quickly 5 small ones besides. Hideous to behold is he on whom injustice presseth alone. Did you ever know this? Shared injustice is half justice, and he who can bear it shall take the injustice upon himself. A small revenge is humaner than no revenge at all, and if the punishment be not also a right and an honor to the transgressor, I do not like your punishing. Nobler is it to own oneself in the wrong than to establish one's right, especially if one be in the right. Only, one must be rich enough to do so. I do not like your cold justice. Out of the eye of your judges there always glanceth the executioner and his cold steel. Tell me, where do we find justice which is love with seeing eyes? Devise me then the love which not only beareth all punishment, but also all guilt. Devise me then the justice which acquitteth every one except the judge. And would ye hear this likewise? To him who seeketh to be just from the heart, even the lie becometh philanthropy. But how could I be just from the heart? How could I give every one his own? Let this be enough for me. I give unto every one mine own. Finally, my brethren, guard against doing wrong to any anchorite. How could an anchorite forget? How could he requite? Like a deep well is an anchorite. Easy is it to throw in a stone, and if it should sink to the bottom, however, tell me, who will bring it out again? Guard against injuring the anchorite. If ye have done so, however, well then, kill him also. Thus spake Zarathustra. Man, he just keeps getting worse and worse. No, this is dumb. Do not hold on to resentment. Do not harbor anger. I'm going to tell you the absolute worst curse that I ever place upon anyone. Is that God should give you exactly what you deserve. Exactly what God feels like you deserve. That is the worst curse that I will ever place on anyone. I will not go out of my way to get a petty revenge. It is tempting. Let me tell you about tempting. We just talked about my neighbor. If you go back through my channel on my shorts, and it is a long journey, so I don't recommend it, you will find my neighbor on there. He has come onto my property, which I own, and dug a ditch because he thought that there needed to be drainage, and there didn't. There was no drainage problem. So he came onto my property, he dug in my property, and destroyed my property. And so my mind thought of revenge. Absolutely. He's got a garden. It's nice. He's got all kinds of stuff. And my revenge, what I wanted to do, and I have decided not to, but I really wanted to. I wanted to plant a tree right in the way of the sun for that garden. I wanted to plant a tree. I plan on moving. I don't plan on being in this house for another year. God may have different plans, but I don't plan on being here because of this situation. But I was going to plant a tree to shade out his garden for the rest of forever anyway. And not just any tree. Like, I got a tree in mind. It grows to about 150 feet tall, and it has really, really good branches, and it shades out really well, and it would stop almost everything from growing in his yard. I'm not going to do it because that is feeding the wrong energy. Instead, I will pray that God gives him exactly what is coming to him. Exactly what God thinks is coming to him. Not what I think, because my judgment would be worse. But what God wants to come for him. And so, I am satisfied with that. I am not attempting to take out the petty revenge, even though I could. I really, genuinely just want the man to leave me alone. I want to not have to worry about him. And so I give it over to somebody else, because if I am putting out the energy of planting that tree to shade out his yard, I am planting in my own life resentment, anger, and grudges. And that will be the fruit that comes from planting those seeds. More resentment, more anger, more judgment. And I'm not down for that. And so I give it to God. I let God make the decision on what the punishment should be, not me. There are absolutely times to be judgeful, right? If your life is in danger, you have the ability to judge and save yourself. You have the ability to defend yourself. I am not anti-violence. I am anti-unprovoked violence. I believe that violence serves a purpose. It is part of that balance that I am always hammering on. This guy over here, he's a bully. And if he steps into my yard, I will take care of that, right? But he does in the middle of the night. He gets out there in the middle of the night and digs holes. Digs ditches in the middle of the night because he knows that I'm asleep. But if he does that stuff when I'm awake, then I can handle the business. And zero repercussions for that. That's God deciding that he needs his ass whooped. I'm not going to go into his yard. I'm not going to take the time to plant things. I am not going to go out of my way to antagonize him. But if the situation arises, judicious use of force is a thing. Intentions matter. More than anything else in the entirety of the world, intentions matter. What you set out to do in every single instance is planting a seed for your future. If you are going out with the intention of being grateful, then you will harvest gratitude. If you go out with the intention of planting kindness, you will harvest kindness. But if you go out planting malice, you will receive malice. It is an immutable law of creation. There are 8 of those. I have them listed out. You can go back and check them out. If you want to bring things into your life that are positive, I suggest following these laws. It works. It does it for me. Part of that is this. It's definitely not this. We have not, as of yet, gotten a whole lot of wisdom from here. Right? We've seen a lot of examples of what not to do, and that may be his point, right? I may be completely missing the point of him trying to show the opposite of the way to go, but it seems like he is intending to show a way to go, and he is just simply misled the entire way. This, as much as the last one, is really just not it. Objective justice serves purpose. Subjective justice serves evil. And that is true. You subjectively judging to take revenge is going to lead to bad things. And that's where I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. We're getting about to the wrap-up point, and I could probably fit another one in, but I'm already frustrated enough, so we're going to leave this one go. Hopefully, I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. I understand that I hold some unconventional beliefs and that I have a tendency to step on toes. When I relay that, it is not intentional, but I do not apologize for it. I am built in the way that I break apart things. If something is correct, I will stand 10 toes down on it, and if it is wrong, I will die fighting against it. These things are wrong. And it doesn't matter how many philosophical minds believe otherwise. I am isolated. But I am happy in my isolation, right? I say that. I would love to have other people aligned with me in communion with me. But I refuse. And I am perfectly content with being alone if nobody is going to be in alignment with what I am, because I really am just standing on love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, and mind, love your neighbor as of yourself, go forth, be stewards of the earth and subdue it, be fruitful and multiply and shed no blood of man. Like, I'm literally, that's the sum of everything I'm doing. And if you can't do that, I have no time for you. If you can't be honest, I have no time for you. And if you are going to be consumed with self-loathing and depression and anxiety, right? If you are choosing these things to continue in your life, then you don't have no place with me. If you want them to be gone, I can help. That's not saying that they have to be gone for you to be around me. You can be depressed. I'm going to help you work through that. But you have to want to work through it. You can't just pay lip service. You can't just say it. You have to actually want it. And if you want it, then we're aligned and we can be in communion. But if you don't, if you're perfectly happy just bitching all day, I ain't got time for that. If the only thing you can do is complain about your situation, I don't have time for that. But if you want to complain about it one time and then start working on your plan, I am here for that. What we are doing here is breaking apart some of them narratives, right? Some of these things are very firmly held in people's minds, right? That part about the women, that is not pulled out of isolation. Other people believe that shit too. I find it completely despicable, right? Like, that is a terrible mindset. But most of Nietzsche's mindset so far has been pretty terrible. He has chosen depression at every single opportunity, and he claims to be a philosopher seeking the good in life with this. I don't see it. Maybe there's more, maybe coming up, right? This was a journey. This was 3 or 4 separate sections. We're still in the first section, and this was the beginning, and maybe it gets better. Hopefully it gets better, because this is not good. I don't understand why people ever listen to this guy. From what I'm reading here, like, he could have went into obscurity and had no repercussions. If you like what I'm doing here, let me know down below. You can do it a like, share, and a sub. If you and a comment if you agree or disagree. If it stays respectful, it gets to stay up. If you really like what I'm doing here, hit me with that super thanks, because I am not a communist. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pit Steak. Peace.